It's kind of finding those moments
and
too.
And trying to understand it and really thinking that it's true. It's the things that set you apart that make you desirable to someone.
Yeah. How did you first, I guess, then transfer from the strip club to more burlesque? Or were you doing burlesque at the strip club?
I was doing burlesque at the strip club.
Okay,
yeah. It just kind of became more and more elaborate, the shows, over the years. But I would say the turning point for me was 2000. So in 2000, I got a lot of attention suddenly because I had been dating other famous men, but for some reason it was very interesting to people that I was with Marilyn Manson. And I was on the cover of Playboy. I was starring in a show with the Pussycat Dolls that had a lot of mainstream attention, and suddenly like Variety and the LA Times and all of these like entertainment media was singling me out as this girl in the giant martini glass is the best part of the show. And so I got a lot of attention from that. I was on the cover of Playboy. I was suddenly like flying to Paris and performing for Louis Vuitton and Marc Jacobs and walking the Gaultier runway. And so a lot of things happened for me pretty quickly around that time. And at that time, Playboy was still a thing, a lot of stars still posed for Playboy, like Pam Anderson and, Naomi Campbell and Drew Barrymore. It was a time. So when my Playboy came out, there was a big press push and people talked about who was on the cover of Playboy. So it was really then.
It was I think more iconic than it is today.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's not the same.
It's a
at
different
all.
time.
Yeah,
and it was all real, like print too.
Yes.
Now it's all online.
And it was, also I was very different on the cover of Playboy. There hadn't been a Playboy cover model really like me in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it was all like
it was different.
I'm sure year 2000 too. It's like blondes, massive fake boobs.
Yeah,
I mean, we've all seen the photographs.
Yeah,
it's like The Girls Next Door with Hugh Hefner.
Yeah.
Did you ever have this moment of when that shift happened, of kind of where it propelled you to this level of success and fame that was difficult at all to deal with?
I mean, I remember I really didn't like being the subject on like message boards. There was all the message boards, and I was like,
they picked
okay,
you
but
apart.
then I realized if I didn't read it, it didn't exist. I was like, oh, it doesn't. I don't have to read it. I can choose not to read it. And of course, there's always times when you accidentally have to read stuff like that. Like if you want to read, if you're going to look at something, you're a news article or something, and if you accidentally scroll to the comments, you're like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. But I try to stay away from it because it's not helpful in any way.
Yeah, you try to tune out the noise. And do you still do that to this day?
Yeah. I mean, I think like on my social media, I don't edit comments about myself, but I edit comments if I post a picture of someone else. I don't want any of them to have, I don't want anyone to say things bad about somebody who's up there. If I post a picture of one of my cast members of my show and I feel like, and people start picking it apart, then I'll delete their comments, but I don't delete them about me. I let it fly. I just don't read it really. I just go, scan through it and go. I find that now people kind of, they address things in the comments, so you don't have to.
Yeah, people stand up for you.
Yeah.
I feel the same way exactly. But I will say, depending on which social media site, I feel like people act very differently. Like Twitter compared to Instagram or something.
Oh, yeah.
Why did you decide to speak out if we're on the topic of Marilyn Manson?
Well, I didn't really speak out, but the thing was at the time, I mean, I had to say something, I guess, but I had all these feelings like, okay, we hear a lot about in Me Too, like the time frame and when somebody feels comfortable talking about something. And I thought, I don't feel comfortable talking about this, but now I'm being held to the fire to talk about it because somebody else wants to talk about it. So I felt like that was something that came up for me. So I kind of tried to just make the statement that like my
experience was different.
It was just different, but I'm not going to talk about it right now because I had a lot of people saying, oh, you must have had this happen to you and you didn't tell anyone. And I thought like my experience is different and I'll speak to it when I want. And also I thought I did speak to it at one point when I was newly divorced, when it was like a hot issue for me. And now it's 22 years later since my relationship, and people change and I can't speak to anything that happened before me or after me. And also I thought today I was thinking this too, like because I knew you wanted to ask me about that, I thought, well, the way I would even speak about the experience in 2005 when I was getting a divorce
is very different than
compared
how you feel
to now. Like, I felt very much like I'm going to, like, process all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And I feel different now. Like, I feel and I also felt a lot of pressure in the last 15 years to make amends and make peace, because I would find myself out at events and it's like there would be my ex-husband.
You guys do come across each other sometimes?
We there was a point where I felt so much pressure to, like, forgive and forget that I did. And then this happens, and then it's like, you shouldn't be, you shouldn't be friendly. And so I just I got so exhausted by the whole thing. And then everyone's got their own story and own perspective. And all I have is mine. And I also have mine in various stages of life as well.
Do you guys speak at all?
I think I spoke with him in like 2020, but I try to keep my distance, especially. I just feel like it's such a hot issue and so many people, and I don't want to get into it. I want to focus on moving forward
and what you're working on.
Yeah. And then maybe when I'm ready to talk, or when it behooves me, when it makes sense for me, if I want to write about it in my book one day, I'll do that. But I just feel like I'm not trying to, it's not what I'm not trying to, I don't feel any need to right now.
Yeah. Did you get a lot of backlash for what you said? Did people like jump on it as if it was a statement, or
and I mean, I just thought, like,
seeming supportive of him or whatever?
I was very like, why don't you listen to the people who want to speak? Like, I don't want to speak, but my reasons for not wanting to speak are, not what you think they are.
Yeah.
And it is, again, like, we can't put pressure on other people to speak about things in a time that isn't right for us. And it's just not the right time for me. I was not expecting it.
Yeah.
Of course, I did, like, kind of look at a lot of, like, try to understand what was happening. But again, like, I can't, I think Rose McGowan also said the same thing. It's like, none of those things happened to me. But, I can't speak to other people's experience.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts, I guess, just, you've been living in Hollywood and LA for a long time, like just Me Too and that all coming out in the past couple of years, just like your thoughts on the general movement?
I mean, I think what I really have enjoyed about this is the fact that we get to finally talk about these things, and even having talks about this with other people and other men that maybe didn't even know this kind of thing was happening. I'm saying, hell yeah. I mean, I feel like I've been preyed upon since I was 12 years old, one way or another.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of men don't realize what we go through.
I talk about just with my friends at dinner and stuff. Like, I wonder if it's starts to swing so far the other way that men are almost like afraid to make a move or flirt with you or come on to you, or like, I couldn't have a relationship in the workplace today because it would break all of these rules. It's like, yeah, where do we get to that middle ground?
Yeah. I mean, it's all very tricky, isn't it? It's a really confusing landscape.
But that's why you need to talk about it.
Yeah.
I think that's where it begins, like even at the dinner table with a friend, or I talk to my brothers. But you're right, like having, I think, shining a light on those issues then starts the conversation. It's when it exists in the dark that it starts to breathe.
Agreed.
And
yeah, exactly. And so I've loved having these refreshing conversations, especially with men or with, I've always known, like, amongst my female friends, like, we've shared abuse stories, so. But yeah, I think it is very difficult, and it is very difficult to navigate, like, what's two people that got together and it's just a bad fit, people that, I don't know. I remember reading some article when it was like the thick of the Me Too thing, and I can't remember who it was, but a woman came forward and talked about it. I read the whole thing of her account of her Me Too, and I was like, wait, this was just a bad date. This sounds like a bad date where you misread each other's signals, or I can't remember who it was, but it was it was a comedian, right? Was it Aziz Ansari?
Yes, Aziz.
Did you read it? Do you remember thinking? I remember thinking, oh, this is like a little swinging too far, because, like, everybody's had that awkward date where they come home and that person's like, I'm going to make a move.
Well, I think there's different levels. Exactly. And I think like, gun to the head, getting raped is very different than getting groped, which is very different to someone like inappropriately making a comment or whatever. It's a spectrum.
Right.
And I think sometimes that gets missed of acknowledging that there is a spectrum.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I have many thoughts. And
I know there's so many things. And then I can disagree with myself like crazy, but I just think like, oh God, I'm trying to imagine like.
But I also think there's power dynamic, and that.
Yeah,
there's like the
true.
social power dynamic of, maybe something wouldn't be that, like, it wouldn't seem that crazy if you were in an equal social standing, but then someone who's way below could be made to feel way more uncomfortable by like a smaller thing.
I can definitely see that. So then what do you have to do though? Say, oh, you can't date people that are not in the same status as you? That's not cool.
I mean, that's, yeah.
That's not great. Like, that's where I see your point for sure, the power exchange.
I mean, like all of these things, just like I feel like recently that have come out of, I don't know, you see like different celebrity men who are like cheating on their wives or like messaging young girls. And I have all sorts of thoughts because sometimes people are signing up and they know what they're signing up for publicity or, they want something out of it. And then sometimes it's like, you are young and naive and it's someone who's famous and wealthy. Yeah. So it's difficult. I don't think there's a one like answer. It's not so black and white.
It's a big conversation.
It's a conversation, but I feel like people don't even really want to have that conversation. They like put it out there into the atmosphere, but then that conversation stops.
Well, they say this is how it is.
Yes.
This is wrong.
And if you
this
stray
is right.
from this, then you're like, I just think we're in such a polarized state right now. Like the most polarized I've ever seen in my entire life, like politically and all of these things. And that people are all good, people are all bad. If you... I mean, I get this all the time. Like, I'll have people on the show, and I've had friends be like, if you have this person on, you're giving them a platform. And I'm like, I disagree with that. I think everyone should come and, ultimately we're talking about mental health and say their piece and why are you the way that you are? And I'm interested in what makes people their psychological makeup.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean I agree with everything that everyone comes on here and says.
It's a conversation, and there could be one person listening that agrees with one person and one with another. It's like we can't.
And that's how you grow and also how you develop your own opinions. Like you have to hear from different perspectives to figure out why I believe what I believe. Yeah. Sorry. Little rant.
Well said.
Little rant there. Whether you prefer smoking or taking edibles, I am neither. I hate marijuana. I don't smoke